Ba 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 ba. Ba ba boo ba ba boo. Okay, so I was explaining to you the various kinds of ambiguity in Lojban and how much each of them matters and what sort of ambiguities we should strive to eliminate and how. The different kinds of ambiguity are, this is a word called non-pay, non-think, where zero think. Non-pay means zero think. Which this is a world where I'm not going to think about what I do. I'm just going to go around and do stuff. See what happens. Lots of dying, probably, is what happens with the non-thinking. But that's okay, because it's just a game. I'm going to go to this pretty... Oh, the dolphin! It's with the dolphin! Shoy dolphin! I mean, shoy delfino! That's a Lojban for dolphin. Alright. So, other than hanging out with dolphins, we're also explaining how Lojban works. Oh, the dolphins. Oh, yeah, it says delfino. See, you can see it says the same thing I did, so you can tell I know Lojban. The rabbits are leaping. Okay, so we're just gonna hang out here while I explain to you what all it's totally gonna make sense of what's up with all the kinds of ambiguity. When you say ambiguity, that's ambiguous between various forms of ambiguity, like to have an ambiguous grammatical parse, or to have ambiguous semantics, to have an ambiguous grammar parse on the level of the words, or to have an ambiguous parse as to what the words even are. And then you could also, once it's clear what you said, it could also be ambiguous what you meant by it, I guess. So there's that. So these various forms of ambiguity are different in terms of how difficult it is to resolve contentions about the various sorts of ambiguity. All right, supposing that what we were trying to do, on the same team here, trying to reduce ambiguity and figure out how language can be basically clear. But the different kinds of ambiguity come from different sources. So there's different things we're going to have to agree about. Now, to make the sounds so that it's unambiguous how the words sort out, there's never been much contention or problem with that. Sometimes what there was confusion. At first, the Lojban system is kind of ornate, and you have to, in order to get it all perfectly correct, you have to learn about an obscure thing called slinkuhi and so forth, because they just noticed that. Like, they were just going along, like, okay, I think this makes sense, and then they were like, wait, what about there could be slinkuhi, like a word like slinkuhi, imagine the word for slinky was slinkuhi. It's not a very good word for slinky, but it was just an example, because then, what if you said, pa slinkuhi, one slinky, that would also be a lujvo. I just realized that would be a lujvo. Pa slinkuhi. So it would go together into a lujvo. Whoa, bubbles. Synth boy. Oh, Waterboy. This is Waterboy. Sure, yeah. Airball. Waterboy. Waterboy. I'm playing with the Waterboy. Yee. Yee. Klare duxe. Too hot. Klare duxe. So there's the various forms of ambiguity, and we definitely are all trying to be unambiguous, where there's other things we could all be doing other than speaking Lojban. So that's like the point. But also, ambiguity as far as how the sounds go together, that's not even contentious, because once you agree to it, it's just like, okay, this is how the words go. And what is contentious, actually, there was contention about that, about whether the Lojban system should definitely have to be Lojban, and whether the RAFC should have to be the RAFC, the originally assigned RAFC, or whether you could mean other things by the RAFC, or whether there should be the Lojban system at all. So there has been that much of a disagreement on the level of morphology, like should there be Lojban at all, and what should it mean for something if something's a RAFC. So there's that. But that's a pretty easy. There's pretty simple to reach agreement on that level. An even easier level, it turns out, you would think this is in English. There's words are reused for different meanings all the time, and that seems like necessary or useful or important or something. And in Lojban we just don't, and that's that. It's never caused much of any problem. I mean, there's plenty of sounds to go around. You can totally just use new sounds, so like everything's fine. And like whenever we've had any, like when we were like, oh wait, we're using bonzu for two different things, then it was no problem splitting up into bonzuku and bonzunu and bonzuni and whatever, because people are like, hey, whatever, I get a word. I get bonzuka. Bonzuka means what I wanted to mean, so that's fine. And so it turns out deciding about what the verbs, what the big words should mean, what the content words should mean, that turns out to be easy. Turns out to be surprisingly easy. So the level on which it's difficult to, so, and it's different in terms of who has to agree to do what. All right, if we're agreeing about if we're having words mean one thing, then like in general, mostly people have to be flexible about like about particular words. Like if you've started to use a word in a way that's different than the way someone else is using it, you might have to be, like in my last video I was saying about how they changed the meaning of my song, and now I have to be, I kind of like the new meaning. I'm not even going to change the lyrics of my song. I'm just going to accept the new meaning of my song, because now my song says "Ichumi no da disku" is the do I have nothing? Do I not express any desires? Which is, that's not what it meant at first, but I kind of like that better. It's kind of evocative, so I'm just leaving that. That's fine. But in general, you might have to be like, oh no, we have a disagreement about a word. I have to learn a different word and say a different word, which is whatever. I mean, you kind of have to learn different words all the time in order to speak a language anyway. Especially, I mean, it's like a semi-finished language. It's got words for like some stuff, and you're going to need to learn words at some point in order to speak Lojban. So that's fine, but it's different. There's a different level. There's a different sort of problem, a different sort of it being potentially difficult to come to agreement when we're talking about the if we're talking about the, cause a cave, Lokevna, a hole. Lokevna means a hole. Lokevna. So the if you're talking about, we're talking about like different bond cloud. We're talking about a disagreement about how to have the short words mean. I mean, you can have disagreements about long words, but mostly you wouldn't, because it's fine. If you want long words, there's lots of long words. You can just make another one, and they're like free. Like, I made she how hu how he, which means I feel I feel proud of having just invented a new attitudinal. And you might be like, that doesn't make sense to me, but if you didn't like that, you could pretty easily be like, oh, that doesn't make sense to me, so I'm making she how hu how ha, or shao hu how how he, or whatever. There's like a zillion different words available, so you don't even have to if you disagree about a long word, then you can just be like, hey, I disagree, I'm just going to take a different long word. That's fine. The only disagreement where you're going to have people be like, hey, no, we actually have to have a fight, is if there's a disagreement about a short word. Because short words, you might be like, hey, that's what I was going to use that short word for. Now, you could be like, if you were like, but I think that she how he would be a good sound for my meaning. I think I should get to decide that. You could be like that about she how he, but that wouldn't make much sense at all, would it? And it makes more sense to people. It makes more sense to be that way about a short word, because there's not as many short words. There's only a few short words. I mean, relatively speaking, there's kind of a lot, and people haven't found that. We haven't needed to, like, there isn't a huge amount of contention about a bunch of short words. I mean, there could be, maybe there would be, if there were thousands of Lojbanists. They would start to be like, well, all these Lojbanists use these short words for this, and these Lojbanists use these short words for that. Maybe, I guess, but or not. I don't know, because that hasn't happened. And what has happened is there's just a few Lojbanists have used a few short words that didn't make any sense before. The few people reused words that were, I mean, but po is different. Po was mildly used before. It wasn't like the reason why. I mean, I can tell you, I remember when I used to try to use po, because I was like, okay. I mean the original meaning of po, because I was like, okay, this makes sense. We got a word po. All right, let's see what to do with our word. Yay, a word. How does it work? And so they gave us this word po, and the po, it sort of made sense on abstractly thinking about it, because they were like, po will be a word for intrinsically related to, because pa is like, they were trying to do like a genitive case to copy English. Everything they were doing back then was to copy English. And so they were trying to have like a genitive case. They were trying to be like, so it's like possessive, but like, I don't know, we're going to disambiguate and be super clear about which meaning. And so we're going to split it out. So let's have pa mean, I don't know, let's just have that be like associated with, and then we can make another one that's like, and so they were just sort of making stuff, and so they were like, okay, this will make sense. Po will totally mean, what po is going to mean is po is going to mean the intrinsically related. Like, there'll be different kinds of related. It'll make sense because there's intrinsically related and non-intrinsically related, and it'll all, and so, but then, so like, like po will be like my, but they were thinking in terms of English. They wanted to translate like my and apostrophe s and stuff. They were like, but po will be my in the specific logical sense of like my arm, because that's like an intrinsic relationship. Yeah, we should make a special word for that. Yeah, okay, yeah, good idea. Yeah. And they were thinking they were doing super cool, and then I was there like, okay, yeah, that's what po means, and then we started trying to use it, and then we were like, wait, is there any time when po is the right thing to use? Because the thing is, pretty much always, most of the always, it's gonna be like, po, you can be like po, lo birka po mi, right? But they already had an idea of putting many places as possible. They put so many places in everything. So they had already put places in everything. Like birka already has a place for the person whose arm it is. So they made this thing intrinsically related, like my arm, but then they also made that arm should have a place for the person whose arm it is, and they were both. They put both. So then, since we had both of them, they were like, where's my hole? Let me get a So since they were like, okay, well, we just have both then. Imina kakna powiska. Imienichu po kakna powiska kuki. I chodna imienichu po kakna powiska. I manku. I mi rozważbu szuchachu ponse. I already have it. I mi punchi. Just should be on them. So what were we talking about? What do you want to talk about? Lojban totally makes sense. You'd be surprised how much sense it makes. It makes like buckets of sense. So there's ambiguity between what Bonkle you're speaking, but that's like, come on. Technically there's an ambiguity there, but like lots of stuff technically ambiguous. And alright, so the goal you've set, alright, that's what I'm trying to explain, is that these are different in terms of what goal are you actually setting yourself. How difficult is it actually going to be how difficult will it really be to make there not be this sort of ambiguity? Because this is a cost-benefit trade-off for any sort of ambiguity. It turns out the costs are kind of surprisingly low for some of these ambiguities. Like, you might think you might think there would be a lot more ambiguity than there is. You might think that it would be difficult to agree what the meanings of words are, for sure, or that people would be like, no, I want the morphology to go like this. But it turned out to be surprisingly easy to, I mean, people will be like, no, I don't want you to say "ew," but there isn't like an issue though. There's like, the morphology has had a few people sometimes here and there, every once in a while. Occasionally someone will do anything interesting with the morphology, and then mostly not. It's mostly like really pretty boring what happens with the morphology. So that's interesting. That's interesting how easy that is, it turns out. So but then some things are more difficult. Like if you want to tell people never ever reuse the small words, even though what we used them for a long time, but what we assign them to doesn't make sense. Like po being something, it was redundant. They put both. A lot of things they put were redundant, and a lot of times that's fine and just gives you options. But in that case, the redundancy is, you know, there's both. You got the two different ways to say my arm, basically, and lobirka po mi is technically slightly more ambiguous into not like any of these forms of ambiguity, but a different sort of ambiguity where there is more than one possible meaning within. Like Lojban allows there to be, you have to allow there to be more than one meaning of a sentence. Like miklama lo zarshi has different meanings depending on which market I'm going to. That's not like you can. That's still. It's okay. It's okay that there can be more than one market, but that's another form of ambiguity that Lojban makes no attempt to remove that one, because you need that. You need to be able to talk to them about more than one thing using the same word, or you would need rather too many words. You would have to invent all of the words. So you would have to invent a different word for every concept ever. And every referent, everything that ever happened, every object, every single event would need its own word, which is obviously impossible. So look, there's some kinds of ambiguity we're removing, and some that we are not. There's some that and the ones we're removing are the ones that are possible and easy enough that it makes sense. We're doing stuff that makes sense. That's the stuff that we are doing, is the sensible stuff. Okay, so. Since the kind of ambiguity of which way does this person like to use this short word is a difficult ambiguity to resolve, because now we're talking about how do people like to use the words they like to, like how do they like for their language to be in terms of being easy to use, being simple enough to understand. Okay, I'll be back.